It's important to note that I don't do content for the sake of doing content. I'm not going to force it. Everything I say is how I feel. Particularly in this video, everything I am about to say is backed up with facts and logic. After yesterday's win at Carolina, I sensed a growing annoyance from Team Tank that, well, we just screwed ourselves out of the Caleb Williams sweepstakes. That's not necessarily true. Caleb Williams for the Vikings is still very much possible for two reasons. Number one, the Vikings are just a bad football team, leading the league in turnovers, poorly coached on offense, bad offensive line, bad defense. And yes, the defense was outstanding yesterday, but we're a quarter of the way through the season. The Panthers have a terrible offense. We've seen them the first 3 games before that. Now, can Marcus Davenport make that type of an impact to where we're like, oh, okay, this could be something worth raising hell about? We'll see. But until then, we have to take what we have seen the most of. You've got Kansas City coming up. That's going to be a loss. And you did save your season with the win yesterday, which, going back to that win against Carolina, the intensity, not the quality of play, but the intensity of that game from start to finish was the equivalent of an NFC championship game. You needed that to beat the Carolina Panthers. You've got the Kansas City Chiefs coming up, and that's going to be an L baseline. But if Taylor Swift and her entourage of celebrity friends decides to show up, we saw yesterday between Jets Chiefs, Sophie Turner, Hugh Jackman, Ryan Reynolds, Blake Lively, if they decide to venture out to US Bank Stadium, I mean, basically the extra media attention that's going to bring, I mean, the pressure that's going to put on the players. They play goofy as hell, the Minnesota Vikings. They're a goofy-ass team when it's just us regular folks watching them. Now you add celebrities, which I'll tell you something right now. If you put in front of me in this studio Sophie Turner, Hugh Jackman, and Ryan Reynolds, and hypothetically speaking, they came to specifically watch me do this, oh, I'll be a mess. I won't be able to contain myself, not because they're celebrities. I don't care about that. But the nerd in me is like, oh, bro, this is Jean Grey, Wolverine, and Deadpool. I can't screw up in front of them. But you've got the Kansas City Chiefs coming up, and the rest of the schedule, there's no gimme as far as a team that you can point out and say, oh, for sure, the Vikings are definitely going to beat this team. There's a very good chance. And the Chicago Bears, the Cardinals, they can pull off a couple of wins. You never know. Combine that with the Vikings being bad, they may end up with a high draft pick on their own, trying or not trying to tank. That's number one. Number two, and before I get to that, I want to bring up 2 quotes. The first quote is by Caleb Williams' father, Carl Williams, who recently said in an interview for GQ magazine, quote, "The funky thing about the NFL draft process is he'd almost be better off not being drafted than being drafted first. The system is completely backwards. The way the system is constructed, you go to the worst possible situation, the worst possible team, the worst organization in the league because of their desire for parity. Gets the first pick, so it's the gift and the curse." The second quote I want to bring up is from Deion Sanders, coach at Colorado, speaking on his son, Shedeur Sanders. He said, quote, "Shedeur don't want to be 2 to nobody. He don't get down like that. People are projecting him behind Caleb Williams, and Caleb Williams is phenomenal, but Shedeur ain't no backseat rider." 2 of the top quarterback prospects. Their fathers have both come out publicly to say that there's a good chance that my son may go back to school for another year. In the case of Deion Sanders, he said absolutely, but we'll see. Why do I bring this up? The number 2 reason why Caleb Williams and Shedeur Sanders, for that matter, because he's climbing up the draft board each and every week, the reason why they are still very much in play for the Minnesota Vikings is because for these players, Williams and Sanders, they, I'm sure, are going through the evaluation of the next possible destination. The Arizona Cardinals, terribly run organization. They're an all-around disaster. Brian Flores, hell, he ended the interview process for head coach for that team to instead take a lower position with the Vikings defensive coordinator. But the timing of Carl Williams, when he spoke on his son Caleb Williams ripping the draft process, that was back on September 6th. That was when the all-around consensus was that the Arizona Cardinals, they're going to end up with the first pick. I think Carl Williams was sending a direct message to Arizona to say, if you end up with the top pick, my son, he's going to go back to USC. We're good. Screw you guys. But I also want to include the Chicago Bears. They're a dumpster fire, of course. Ryan Poles, he hasn't done anything right except trade for DJ Moore. But you combine that with this growing sense, this is not from me, but from the outside, especially the media. I think Justin Fields is a bad player. But you are seeing each and every week a growing ripping of the Chicago Bears to where they're like, yo, Justin Fields, he can't survive there. He can't have any success there. They are failing Justin Fields. That's exactly what a week or so ago, what Mike Greenberg of Get Up said. He said the Chicago Bears, they are failing this young man. I don't necessarily believe that they're a bad organization, but I also think Justin Fields is a bad player, but it doesn't matter. If everybody else thinks that Justin Fields has no chance of success only because he's with the Bears, then okay, that puts you in the same position as Arizona. Except now you're seen as a team, Chicago, where the careers of quarterbacks go to die. Because of those two teams, both of those teams, by the way, have 2 chances to end up with high draft picks to get those 2 quarterbacks. These 2 players, I can see a situation to where they both go back to school. Eli Manning, 3 days before the 2004 NFL Draft, the then San Diego Chargers reached out to Eli and basically were trying to negotiate ahead of time because at the time they had the first pick overall. They say, hey, we're going to go ahead and take you with our pick. Eli said, I'm not going to play for you. In fact, before the draft even started, both Eli and Archie Manning, in front of cameras, we're not going to San Diego. And they were asked, why? What? Why? Why don't you want to play for the Chargers? And they said, and I'm paraphrasing, they both echoed the same thing. We're not going to go into the specifics. We have our reasons why. The bottom line is we're not going to San Diego. I'll tell you why. Dean Spanos is one of the worst owners in professional sports. I would argue the absolute worst. The only owner that was worse than him is Dan Snyder, and he's gone. Baseball and hockey fans, I'm uneducated in that department, but feel free to chime in with your thoughts in the comment section below. But definitely between the NFL and NBA, it's Dean Spanos. It's not even close. The way he treated Vincent Jackson, rest in peace, Eric Weddle at the end of his tenure with the Chargers, the way he treated the city of San Diego, not doing negotiations in good faith on a new stadium deal. Bro, that town was ready to give you everything to get out of Qualcomm, out of Mission Valley. He's a terrible human being. But why do I bring this up? Evaluating the next possible destination. For Eli, and I'm sure Archie was leading the way as far as talking with his son, dude, don't go there. And just like Deion Sanders, you have with Eli and Shedeur, they have fathers who both played in the league. They are very, very educated on the ins and outs of every organization. You evaluate your next destination. So for Caleb Williams and Shedeur Sanders, if you're looking at if the Bears and the Cardinals end up with the top picks, they may see that and say, oh, nah, I'm going back to school. Why would I put myself in that situation? Combine that with the power that these players now have. These NIL deals, money isn't important anymore. It's not for these college players. Caleb Williams, and this is from Ian Valentino of Pro Football Network. Caleb Williams has an estimated $3.2 million NIL value. He's getting paid by, this is ridiculous. Caleb Williams is getting paid by Wendy's, Beats by Dre, Fanatics, Nissan, PlayStation, Dr. Pepper, United Airlines. And in the case of Shedeur Sanders, this is from Yahoo Finance. Shedeur Sanders has an estimated NIL value of $3.5 million. He's getting paid by KFC, Beats by Dre, Gatorade, Topps, Mercedes-Benz. And by the way, that's just the names that I could fit onto my notepad. They had plenty of other deals with many other companies. And let's just say these numbers are true. Caleb getting paid $3.2 million to play in college. Shedeur Sanders getting paid $3.5 million to play in college. You could say, well, the NFL money, you don't want to turn that down, do you? And technically, you would be right. Except when you look, the only lucrative part of an NFL quarterback's rookie contract, the only lucrative part of that is the signing bonus. That's it. Bryce Young, for example, $25 million this year. By the way, the signing bonus gets paid up front. Bryce Young is getting paid $25 million. After that, he's getting $2.5 million. After that, it's $4 million. CJ Stroud getting paid $24 million because of the signing bonus he's getting paid up front. After that, $2.4 million. It's minimal. So for Sanders and Williams, whenever you declare for the draft, you're going to get your signing bonus. You're not going to lose out on that money. But in the meantime, if we go back to school next year, and let's say this money holds, because I would argue that it's only going to increase. But let's just say this money holds. $3.2 million for Caleb, $3.5 million for Shedeur Sanders. We can go back to school and make more money than Bryce Young and CJ Stroud in their second years in the NFL and avoid a terrible situation. Oh, we're good. We'll take our chances in 2025. You're going to get that signing bonus, but that's the only part of that rookie deal that's, oh, bro, you don't want to pass that up. You're going to get it regardless. Whether it's next year or the year after, you're good and you're still going to get paid regardless of where you play. What does this mean for the Vikings? The Vikings' path to these players is that if the Bears And the first off, you could just be a bad team and end up with a top pick yourself. But if the Bears and the Cardinals end up with the top picks, and at least one of those players, maybe even both, to decide to say, we're going to go back to school, no Kirk Cousins in 2024, you can go ahead and run with the Jaron Hall project or Nick Mullins and say, this is what we're going to do next year. And for the 2025 draft, we're going to be good. Now, the argument there is you don't want to piss off Justin Jefferson. Yes, that is absolutely true. Here's how you do that. After this season, in the offseason next year, 2024, you give him his big contract. That buys you a year where you can make him happy and he's got the money and he's, oh, I did it. That buys you a year time to where then, okay, you're going to be a terrible team, but then after that, you get one of these quarterbacks. It's very much possible for the Minnesota Vikings.